I've got a great video for you today. We're taking a look at the Pure Wings 3 140mm class fan from beQuiet. It's Pure Wings. Alright, how does it compare against other 140mm class fans as well as ones from beQuiet? Here's a little bit about how it ranked at the time that I tested it. Since then I've tested potentially more fans, and I do have videos that are a best of roundup, so I do recommend that you check out those videos on my channel, and I'll try to remember to link it somewhere in there. Alright, the spec information, pretty bog standard for a 140mm class fan, fluid dynamic bearing, 4 poles, and you can see the other specs on here, 6-year warranty. Alright, the first test on here is the case simulation test. It can be looked at scientifically for how good is the airflow concentration, or what size computer case do you plan on buying and sticking this fan into. The first mark is the 6-inch mark. This is representative of a small form factor case. Think an ITX case, so length would be around 120mm class fan. So it's also representative of a short throw distance. That would be a fan in the bottom of your case blowing up towards your GPU, or in an inverted case, having fans at the top blowing down into your GPU. Either way, it's that sort of short distance, and this is assuming an air cooler. Next is the 9-inch mark, 220mm class fans approximately. Think a case that can hold a standard ATX motherboard, but not really much extra room beyond that, so the GPU would be the length of that motherboard. So think like a media center type PC, potentially. Then we got the 11-inch mark. This is your standard mid-tower case, 320mm class fans, or standard 360 AIO. And then we have the 14.5-inch mark. This would be your truly large towers, 340mm class fans, a lot like the Fractal Design Torn. And again, this airflow path matters for air-cooled systems. If you're looking at AIOs or a full ratted out system with custom water cooling, you basically can ignore this section and move to the next one. So we got my control fan. It is 3 parts A12X5 1 part A14, listed right here at the top. And we have one other fan on here other than my control fan, the Silentlynx 4 Pro, and a similar RPM for its noise normalized value. And, well, fans that rank better than my control fan we consider good, very good, best. Fans that rank underneath it would be considered okay to good. So the control fan, being a blend of 120 and 140, is like a 130mm class fan, so it's not really best at either one. 120s tend to do better at the 6 and 9, 140s tend to do better at the 11 and 14-inch marks. So we kind of actually see that here, where my control fan does slightly better at smaller cases, but as it gets larger, it doesn't quite do as well as the two fans, other actual fans listed in this video. So the Pure Wings 3 would be recommended for a mid-tower and larger cases, but generally not recommended for smaller cases, assuming it could fit inside of them. At 100% PEW fan signaling, well, it once again is trading blows with my control fan. Again, wouldn't really get that strong recommendation in smaller cases, but as the case gets larger, it gets a stronger recommendation. How does it rank against other fans? Again, small, simple cross selection of fans that I chose to compare against in this video, and it does really pretty well. Not particularly stand out in smaller cases at this noise normalized mark, but in larger cases, it starts to stand out from the pack a little bit better. So kind of gets a recommendation there. At the 100% mark, well, RPM matters, and it's spinning at 1,800 RPM, almost 2,000. So among the fans that spin at a similar RPM, there are ones that, well, do quite a bit better than it, like the F14, as well as the Mobius 140p, but it's doing okay, while the fans that really do well spin at much higher RPMs. And how does it do at a noise versus airspeed? So this was taken at the 9-inch mark because I need airspeeds over a certain value, and the 9-inch mark gave kind of the best balance point for where the fans tend to dissipate air the most, while keeping most fans at a high enough airspeed that I can actually, well, do a valid test. And it's in the middle of the pack for this subsample selection of other fans I decided to group it against, where all of them would be considered relatively good. None of them are standout bad fans. So it's doing really quite well. So as a budget pick, and we'll see value later on, it's looking pretty good. Next, airspeed through my CPU air cooler. I don't have a test system yet, so I can't do thermal results. It is something that I'd like to acquire thanks to viewers like you joining me as YouTube members or becoming a Patreon or hitting me up with supers. It really does go a long way. I recently acquired a radiator to do testing. Unfortunately, once again, I don't have a test system or two to be able to get those thermal results. So we're just going to do airspeed versus noise and RPM at this time. And I do have an approximation on the next chart for what airspeed approximates what wattage on my particular CPU. Now, all that said, we got the same control fan on here. So the first graph is airspeed versus RPM. So this is a blade efficiency graph. And the Pure Wings is really doing quite well. It's actually a better blade design, ironically, than the Silent Wings. It is right there with my control fan. How about in terms of that noise, all-in-point noise value? Well, at low RPMs, it's doing really well. Really, really well. But as things increase, it falls away from my control fan, and so does the Pure or Silent Wings. So how does it rank against other fans? Well, it's doing really well. It's ranked towards the top of the graphs in these normalized results, so I put it as a very good level if you're looking at a budget pick. Once again, we're going to take a look at the value a little bit later on, but it's looking pretty good, assuming you like the design. And we got my approximations over here in the corner. And at 100% PEW fan signaling, well, RPM matters, and higher RPM fans tend to do significantly better, but there are a couple exceptions in here. But it's doing okay. It's in a good grouping of fans, I would say. It is slightly on the noisy side compared to other fans around it, but I would say it's not a terrible result. How about in that noise versus airspeed result? Well, it does really well at lower RPMs, but as it increases, it doesn't hit quite as hard as other fans. It's just not quite as strong. It basically becomes average. It is with these other, albeit good fans, but not great fans. So take that for what you will. So with every beQuiet fan, the dominant feature, in my opinion about it, is these ridges on the fins of the fan blades. Now these ridges are here for mostly their style purpose, but they do serve a function. They help guide the air around the fans, because as it spins, the air has a tendency to slide off towards the tip, which is why you want close tolerances between the tip of the blade and the housing, so that you don't get any back pressure in a pressure scenario, and it also just improves the efficiency at which the fan can force the air down. And these ridges just help guide the air along each of the wings of the fan. If we take a close look at the distance between the edge of the blade and the housing, we see that it is fairly close, much better than a average fan, and including more modern average fans, like older average fans, were actually probably closer to maybe this ridge, or maybe even kind of in the middle there, while more modern average fans are kind of at this one tip while it extends right to the next little flat area. So that is great to see. The hub in the middle is a little bit on the small side, which is good because you get more fin area or wing area. If we flip around to the back real quick, the struts are fairly thin except for the wire one. It's a little bit on the, well, I'm going to call it average for nowadays. There are definitely ones that have made it thinner in terms of their thickness. This one is certainly thick and very flat, so that is going to cause a little bit of extra resistance against air flowing past it, but not overall the end of the world. The other ones are nicely angled to cause very little disruption as the air flows past it. So the struts are one of the areas where you will get noise. So as the fan spins, each time a blade passes one of these struts is basically a section where noise can occur. So having the area, the space where the blade interacts with each of the struts as small as possible helps reduce that interaction. Other than that, the inner part of the housing is very basic. It is just a smooth bore, no inlet design, no outlet design, just perfectly flat. The housing on it, the rest of the frame, is also more or less basic. It's just got this little bit of indent to give it a little bit of styling so it just doesn't look completely flat.
There's no rubber pads, although it does look like there's space that it could be sold aftermarket and placed squarely in there to get some vibration dampening going on. But other than that, if you wanted to use this in a radiator or heatsink or anything like that, the frame is a nice square design, so fan next to fan next to fan, they should seal up fairly nicely with one another, so you'll get a good pressure seal in a pressure type application. Not that this fan is necessarily designed for it, but if you want to use it as that because you're on a budget or a different fan died and you have these in your case, and so you just need something as a quick swap, it would do just fine. And quick version, the blades themselves are more or less a hybrid style, as most fan blades are. There isn't a true overlap between each of the blades with each other. Might be end to end, but it's very close. And the distance between the blades is a little bit on the tight side. So again, kind of halfway in between, getting sort of a pressure fan and an airflow fan. But most fans these days are this sort of style. All right, let's move on.
And the last test is CFM Testing. The control fan has changed to just an NF-A14 original because I don't have a G2 yet at time of this filming. But CFM Testing is basically blowing air down a tube, so it can be used for making your own at-home wind tunnel or looking at things scientifically. It's not really as applicable to case airflow. Anybody who says CFM is a good indicator of case airflow is lying to you and doesn't understand aerodynamics. I'm an aerospace engineer. And it's not completely applicable to air through a CPU cooler or radiator because it's not restricted. Now, if you put restrictions behind it, then you can do it that way, but by itself, it's not. So once again, we got the blade efficiency over here, and it's underperforming compared to my control fan, but not by a lot. And we got noise versus CFM on the right side, and it's doing slightly better than my control fan on this side. So take that for what you will. It's doing pretty well. And in terms of noise normals results, CFM, it's ranked towards the top of the graph, so it's doing really quite well. And these noise normals results ignores the RPM. It is just normalizing it to a noise level that I found basically inaudible in my home environment. And at 100% PWM fan signaling, well, it's pretty much middle of the pack, and it's doing really quite well given its particular RPM. There are ones that spin at lower RPMs that move more air, but they actually are noisier. So you do need to choose kind of where you want the dial to sit. In terms of its CFM versus decibel rating compared to a small subsample selection of other fans, well, it's sitting right at the top for the most part. It's kind of middle top for these other fans that I chose. And all these would be ranked fairly well overall. So it's doing really well. All right, now we're taking a look at the value proposition. This is a $12 fan. When I purchased it and checked on Amazon, prices do change. So that means the value proposition of fans does vary based on sales and whatnot. But based on standard retail pricing I could find, this is where it lies. And overall, it is a great value at the 6-inch mark, a noise normalized, and at 100% PWM fan signaling. It isn't the best, it isn't at the tippy top, but it's doing really well in terms of that value. So if you're looking for a budget pick, it's looking like a good option. At the 11-inch mark, well, it's basically, I'd call it second place. You shouldn't be running your case fans at 100% PWM fan signaling in general. So it's doing really well. But if you do need to run your fans at 100%, it isn't the best choice. There are other better ones, but it's looking pretty good. Again, overall. How about in CFM testing? Again, ranking towards the top, it is a good choice. And if we take a look at performance from a CPU air cooler, it is once again ranked towards the top. So as a value pick and for a 140mm class fan, it is looking like a great choice. If you want absolute maximum performance, there are better options out there, of course. But for a value-oriented build, this should be on your short list of fans in your selection. And that brings us to the end of the video. And at every video, I like to show off my raw data. This data does belong to me. If you want to use it for your own personal use, you may go ahead and do so. If you want to use it in any sort of video, publication, written, or journal, I do ask that you reference me and my channel, because I'm the one who generated the data, and it takes me quite some time to, well, test fans and then make the videos and upgrade charts and everything like that. If you like what I'm doing in terms of this channel, you like the idea, want to see it grow and succeed, I ask that you join me as a YouTube member or as a Patreon. Hitting that subscribe button is also a great way to show support. It does help this channel kind of grow in the background, but at a little bit of a slower rate, which is okay with me. There is more testing, more method improvements that I'd like to make. Unfortunately, it's just not viable for me right now. Anyways, I guess that's it. I have a Discord page. I'm not super active on it, but if you got questions, want to talk, I see the messages and I do respond to them and that kind of thing. Or you can just leave a comment in the video. If there are particular fans you want me to test in the future, please leave in the comment section down below. And I hope you have a great day and hope to see you next time here on Computer Tech and More.